For my thoughts on all the latest happenings in the NFL in a completely relaxed, unscripted format, be sure to check out my channel, JG9 News. And now, on with our feature presentation. I want to give you a hypothetical scenario that might play out sometime in the next month if you're watching as of the day this video gets released. You're playing fantasy football with your buddies, and you're drafting your team, trying to build the best possible roster in order to win the championship and get money and eternal bragging rights. This draft is taking place all over the country. You're not all in one place. In the back of your mind, you have a list of players that you want to draft. However, at the same time, you have a list of players that you will not, under any circumstances, draft because you think they're going to be bad, or you don't like their situation, or they're injury prone, or something along those lines. Let's say in this hypothetical that you don't want to draft this man right here, Kansas City Chiefs tight end Travis Kelce, really high, simply because the man is going to be 35 years old this season, and no tight end has ever had 1,000 yards in a season at 35 or older. Sure enough, someone drafts Travis Kelce really high, and not only are you breathing a sigh of relief and celebrating, but you make it incredibly well known that this was a terrible pick. How bad was it? You decide to literally call up your buddy and tell him, hey man, that was a garbage pick. He was never going to be on my board, he was never going to get taken by me, and thank you for taking him so early and absolutely wasting your pick. Heck, you might have done something like that before, where you call up your buddy to tell him how bad his fantasy draft was. You let them know, in no uncertain terms, that your draft stinks. However, what doesn't stink is hitting that like button down below, subscribing, and turning on that notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel. We post every single day about the weird and wacky history of the NFL, telling stories like this one that you might not have heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is the place to be, and I'd really appreciate it if you join the community and help us get to 60,000 subscribers. Thanks in advance for your support. Well, I bring that up because, I kid you not, this actually happened in the NFL. Doing it with your fantasy buddies is one thing, but an owner calling up another owner to laugh at him and tell him how bad his draft pick was? Well, that is something else entirely. Because this man right here is Dan Snyder. And if you know anything about Snyder, you know that he might genuinely be the worst owner in the history of the NFL. There have been some absolutely garbage owners throughout the history of this sport, from the likes of Hugh Culverhouse to David Tepper. But you can make the legitimate argument that Snyder was the worst owner of all time. I would list every single crazy and insane thing that Snyder did as Washington's owner, but I don't think YouTube allows you to upload videos that are longer than 12 hours. You know about some of the things he did, and I talked about it in a previous video of mine, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. You know about how poorly he treated people, how he stole money, how he charged fans to attend practice, how he was constantly involved in lawsuits, how he ran a once proud franchise with a season ticket waiting list extended for decades into the ground, and how he meddled with just about everything, making it impossible for anyone to do their job. But in all likelihood, you've never heard this story, and I have no idea how this story has been lost throughout NFL history, but it has. Because during the 2000 NFL Draft, this man right here, Dan Snyder, literally called up an owner in the middle of a draft to mock him and tell him how bad his pick was. And this is the story behind the bizarre incident involving Dan Snyder at the NFL Draft, the man who might be the biggest moron who's ever had the privilege of owning an NFL team. Before I talk about the actual thing that Dan Snyder did and how absurd it was, we need some context to understand just who this man right here is. This is cornerback Dwayne Goodr, and at the 2000 NFL Draft, the Dallas Cowboys were looking to upgrade their secondary. It's not as though their secondary was bad in 1999 by any means. Dallas had the 5th best defense in the league and picked off 24 passes, which was the 6th most in football. It's just that they lost one of the greatest cornerbacks of all time, losing 8-time Pro Bowler Deion Sanders in a salary cap move. To learn more about the Hall of Fame corner and the current Colorado coach, click the card in the upper right corner. Deion was very solid for the Cowboys in 1999, starting 14 games, being named a Pro Bowler, and being named an AP second-team All-Pro. And while letting go of Deion was a necessary move in order to make the salary cap work, it meant that the Cowboys had a gaping hole at cornerback that they needed to find a way to fill. I should note that Deion was still on the roster at the time of the 2000 NFL Draft, but the writing was on the wall, and he was going to be released in June. Enter the man that you've been watching, a cornerback out of Tennessee by the name of Dwayne Goodr. Many people had Goodr pegged as a first-round pick if he declared as a junior following the 1998 season where the Volunteers won the national championship. However, Goodr returned for his senior season, and his stock slipped as a result, as he did not play great, thanks in part to an injury over the summer while lifting weights and a new defensive scheme. Still, Goodr had a ton of talent, ending his career at Tennessee with 12 interceptions. At the time he graduated, those 12 picks ranked 9th in school history, and he was an instrumental part in Tennessee's national championship win, as he was named the Defensive Player of the Game during Tennessee's Fiesta Bowl win over Florida State, thanks to a critical pick 6 in the second quarter. And it seems as though when it came to this man right here in Dwayne Goodr, a lot of people were high on the man and thought he was going to be an early draft pick, even despite somewhat of a down year in 1999 and even despite some red flags. Here's just a sampling of what was expected going into the 2000 NFL Draft. The Charlotte Observer had him ranked as the 6th best defensive back in the class, even though this was, admittedly, a weak class on paper in the secondary. The Daily News Journal had Goodr as a possible option late in the first round, going somewhere around pick number 25 to the Minnesota Vikings. And another publication, the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, mocked Goodr at pick number 26 to the Buffalo Bills, with another publication, the Tribune, also having Goodr potentially going 26th overall to Buffalo. You get the idea. There were people projecting Goodr to go sometime during the first day of the draft, which was 2 rounds back in 2000, and it made sense considering his strong college career and considering the fact that he ran a sub-4 440 at his pro day. And eventually, Goodr heard his name called, with the Dallas Cowboys selecting him in the second round with pick number 49. This was an incredibly happy moment for Goodr, not just because his dream of making it in the NFL was realized, but because Goodr was actually a Cowboy fan. Back in 1985, when Goodr was growing up, he bet $10 with someone that his Cowboys would beat the Chicago Bears. The Cowboys lost that game 44-0, and you can learn more about that by clicking the card in the upper right corner. As Goodr said, "I've been through the rough years and through the Super Bowl years. I've definitely followed the Cowboys for a long time. The team that he followed for over a decade and a half was now the team he was playing for. And when Goodr got drafted by the Cowboys, he said that he cried for 15 minutes, which was obviously tears of joy. Keep in mind, this was the first draft pick that the Cowboys had in 2000, as they did not have a first rounder due to trading that pick for Seattle Seahawks wide receiver Joey Galloway. And the Cowboys not only felt confident in Goodr and his abilities, but they felt shocked that he was even on the board to begin with. Said owner Jerry Jones, "I've never felt more comfortable making a pick." And as head coach Dave Campos said, "We had Dwayne Goodr targeted very early in the process, and we never wavered on that. In my wildest dreams, I did not believe that he would drop to us. So I'm very excited." As a side note, to learn more about Cowboys head coach Dave Campo, who might be the worst head coach in the history of the franchise, click the card in the upper right corner. But with that, the Cowboys had their guy. And with that in mind, that should be the end of our story, right? The Dallas Cowboys make a draft pick. They like the pick they made because, of course they do. They want to pick the guy if they didn't like him. And the player in question loves the fact that he was drafted and shows immense gratitude and appreciation to the team that drafted him. That should be it, right? There shouldn't be another party getting involved in this. Well, that's where the other team behind me, Washington, decided that it would be a good idea to do something that, I've got to be honest, I've never seen any team do before at an NFL draft, which is saying a lot for me because I cover this scheme for a living. See this man right here? This is Dan Snyder, the owner of Dallas's bitter rival, Washington. And he was, how shall I say it, really young and really stupid. He was 35 years old, which is a baby in owner terms. And this was his first ever NFL draft, having bought the team in May of 1999. And when Dallas drafted Goodrich, Snyder's eyes lit up. It wasn't because he was targeting Goodrich and really liked the man and was upset that the Cowboys took him. In fact, it was the exact opposite. Dan Snyder couldn't believe that the Cowboys actually took Dwayne Goodrich. They seriously took the man? Really? Goodrich wasn't that good in 1999, as he was awfully disappointing considering the fact that he was a preseason All-American and did not live up to the hype. He had a medical history, not just in college, but at the NFL Combine, when he got injured while lifting weights. His history was extensive too, as there were reports that he had excessive tissue around his heart. He was arrested for disorderly conduct when, at 2:20 in the morning one Sunday at a Knoxville convenience store, he was loud and causing a disruption, and when asked to leave the store, he threatened to hurt the officers. He was suspended by the program as a result of this. He had a poor NFL Combine, where he only ran a 4.45 40, well below what he was capable of running and well below what he ran at his pro day. When you show up to the Combine not in top physical condition, questions are going to be asked. And while Goodrich was seemingly doing everything to improve his stock in 1998, he was doing everything to destroy his stock in 1999. Which is why this man right here, Dan Snyder, was loving it when the Cowboys made that pick, because he felt as though he couldn't play and would not make it in the NFL due to a myriad of issues. And if that's where the story ended, then alright, no big deal. We see teams happy that players got drafted by other teams all the time, because it means someone that they want could actually fall to them. Each team and each person has their own preference. Heck, remember the 2020 NFL Draft, when the Minnesota Vikings couldn't believe their luck that the Philadelphia Eagles, one pick ahead of them, passed on Justin Jefferson to draft Jalen Reagor, and they were laughing about it? That worked out pretty well for the Vikes, seeing as Jalen doesn't even have 1,000 yards for his entire career. And Justin Jefferson is one of the best receivers in the game, and has put up 1,000 yards in each of his first 4 seasons thus far. But the thing with that clip is that it was in private. The Vikings were happy that they got Jefferson, and they were laughing that the Eagles passed on him, but their general manager, Rick Spielman, didn't call up Howie Roseman to tell him how he just made a massive mistake and to laugh in his face for the pick. Well, you can probably see where this one is going. Because the man that you've been watching this whole time, Dan Snyder, he legitimately thought that it was a good idea and was standard protocol at the draft to be the peanut gallery and call up Jerry Jones to tell him just how bad of a draft pick his Cowboys made. May I remind you in all of this, this is the behavior of an actual NFL owner. This is not you ribbing your buddy about a terrible draft pick made in fantasy football over a couple of beers. This is the owner of a team while conducting business, and while the other owner is conducting business, physically calling up said owner to trash their draft pick and trash their scouts and all their hard work. In fact, during the phone call, not only did Dan Snyder laugh at Jerry Jones, but he said that he didn't even have Dwayne Goodrich on his team's draft board. You took him in the second round? Seriously? We were never even going to take the man. We weren't touching him with a 39.5-foot pole. I cannot believe you reached that badly on your first pick. Man, you guys really screwed up. It seems absolutely insane that an owner would do that, but that's exactly what happened. And to be honest, if I had to bet on any owner doing such a thing, Dan Snyder would be my very first bet. Now, to be fair to Snyder, he was 100% right, because Dwayne Goodrich was one of the biggest busts in the history of the Dallas Cowboys franchise. Despite being the first pick that the Cowboys made in that draft class, he started just one game. Despite being the supposed successor to Deion Sanders, he was not that at all. By the time Dwayne Goodrich's career ended after the 2000 season, the man had broken up one pass and had made 8 tackles, no interceptions. That's it. He was basically non-existent and would have had a disappointing career for a 5th-round pick, let alone a player inside the top 50 who was projected by some at one point to go in the 1st round. So Dan Snyder was right to not have the man on his draft board, and was right to think that the Cowboys completely whiffed with their selection. But this is one of those things where you don't need to say it and tell them that, especially before he even stepped foot on an NFL field. Not the time. It's like if you somehow sneak into the delivery room of your arch nemesis and tell them that their baby is going to amount to nothing in life. And then, 25 years later, that once baby is now in prison for life for murdering someone. Like, yeah, you were right, and your prediction and analysis was spot on, but you did not need to go there at all of the time. That was completely immature and completely uncalled for. And when it came to the situation involving these two teams behind me right here, Dwayne Goodr not being a good player in the NFL was the least of his concerns. I'd be remiss if I didn't at least bring up this situation in brief, even though it does not relate to Dan Snyder. On January 14th, 2003, Dwayne Goodr killed 2 people in a hit and run. He was not intoxicated at the time of the incident, but he did end up serving 8.5 years in prison on 2 counts of criminally negligent homicide. Now, he has been a reformed person since being released from prison. There haven't been any incidents that I know of since 2011 when he got out, and the lone surviving victim did end up forgiving Goodr, but the lives of so many people changed forever on that day. But getting back to the main subject in our story, this man right here, Dan Snyder, I think we all learned a valuable lesson here. And that is that if you're the owner of an NFL team, you should not call up another team in the middle of a draft to tell them what a terrible pick they made. Just keep it to yourself. It's a lesson that should go without saying, almost like me telling a basketball player that you should not shoot a full court shot every time you touch the ball, or like telling a singer in the church choir that you should not loudly scream Silent Night. However, apparently, Dan Snyder needed to learn that for his first draft, even if he was right in his analysis at the end of the day. Because as we learned during the 2000 NFL Draft, and over the course of the 21st century, much like Dwayne Goodr was not a good football player, Dan Snyder was not a good owner. Get your official Jaguar Gear 9 merchandise by going to jj9shop.com, and be sure to like and subscribe, as it really helps the channel out a lot. Join me every Wednesday night where we'll play NFL Trivia for cash prizes at 9 p.m. Eastern over on Twitch. To learn more about the history of college football, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 8. To learn more about the history of Major League Baseball, subscribe to Jaguar Gator 7. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.